First place we want to start is this idea that I've been obsessed with lately, is the idea of the difference that I don't see a lot of companies respecting, the difference between capturing demand and creating demand. We might have talked about this a little bit before, but I continue to hone in on certain components. And I think there's some nuances here for some of the OGs that might, bring something out, some idea for you that that you might not have thought of before. Most companies spend all of their time trying to capture the demand. They spend time on the 1% of people that are actively buying, or whatever percentage that is, but it's not high. For some companies that have no existing demand or are trying to create a category, that number is 0. But for a lot of other companies, they can ride on the coattails of existing demand for a product or category. And they can grow at 20, 30% and be happy without knowing that the category is actually growing a lot faster than that, and they're falling behind, that their competitors that are much larger are growing faster. And so I think that is a huge component. When you think about tactics, the people that play in the capture demand space are people that focus on paid search. I would argue that SEO is a capture demand strategy. Retargeting, for sure. Website CRO, conversion rate optimization for the listeners. Review sites. All of these things require the buyer there's a lot of steps that need to happen for a buyer to take that action first. That's capture demand. That's where most companies spend most of their budget and most of their time. What I have been most interested in is the 99% that aren't buying right now. And how do I create awareness, drive differentiation, and influence product consideration early on in that journey, and then later can capture the demand. A lot of companies don't spend time on this. They might pretend that they are, but to do it really effectively is hard. Cold targeted paid social for an ebook download into a sales cadence is not creating new demand. That is called collecting an email address and then doing sales. And if you're going to do that, like I say all the time, you might as well just use Zoom Info and not pay $50 per email address on LinkedIn ads. So the ways that you can get the create new demand done are a ton of things. Cold targeted paid social is by far the easiest. But if we start to peel back the layers, what about if you can reverse engineer some companies that have created a category, and what have they done? Thought leadership on organic LinkedIn is another perfect strategy for a lot of companies right now. When we could do this, speaking engagements in conferences or on podcasts seems like a really great idea, as long as you have a unique point of view. Creating different types of events, I think, is a really good strategy as well. It's an education phase before someone is interested in buying. And most companies confuse those two things. They think that everyone is interested in buying. And so they treat people that are in the education phase like they're interested in buying rather than educating them solely. So they try to force them into a sales meeting when they're not ready. And then they see that most people don't go into the meeting. And if they do get into the meeting, the win rates are super low. And so if you can acknowledge that clear difference between whether someone is interested in buying your product or not, then you can adjust your marketing based on the reality of where that person is. I don't think you need to get into this super complex, 10-step funnel. It's just they're in or they're not. I like to look at things as binary. It makes it way easier in life. I know that there's a lot of gray, so I'm going to be gray on that binary decision. And so there's a lot of places where it's they're ready to buy or they're not. And so I'll kind of get it started there. We had a lot of good questions. Megan, I'll let you share your thoughts. We've been spending a lot of time talking about this. I'd be interested in what you're thinking, and then would definitely invite some deeper questions. Part of this this whole Demand Gen Live that I appreciate the most is when you question or challenge or look for layers deeper of what I just said. I get a lot out of that. And so if there's things that weren't clear or questions that you have, would be be thrilled to answer them. But go ahead, Megan.
Yeah, I think it's been interesting as we've been talking about this. I think it's been reinforcing, a thought that I've been brewing on for a little while about how customer success and marketing are so interrelated. And when you think about how do I do marketing in a way that is buyer centric, that is putting my customer first, by focusing on that education and that awareness component, I think you're meeting your customer where they are, right? You're giving them information in the way that they want to consume it. You're making interesting content available to them in the places that they already exist. So you're making it easy for them to become aware of it, and then make that choice on their own when they are ready, and then they know where they need to go. And so, obviously everyone knows I'm a big customer success advocate, and that really is my background. And I just love when I'm able to really make the connections of, everything that you're doing along the customer journey, regardless of whether you're marketing or sales or customer success. It really does come back to the customer. And I think everything that you just said is rooted in, let's meet our customer where they are. Let's help them through this process in the way that they want to go through the process. Like, nobody really likes getting a cold call. Nobody really likes getting a cold email, right? People like to opt into the information that's interesting to them, and then raise their hand when they're ready to talk with someone and have a conversation. So I love sort of the customer success spirit that I think naturally is just embodied in that approach. And I also just think it's realistic. I think companies are kidding themselves if they think that, everyone in their ICP wants their product right now. That's just not reality. It's not realistic. And I think just acknowledging the constraints of the reality, and dealing with it effectively is really the right way to go about it. So just a couple of thoughts there, but I agree with everything that you said.
The key point was where they are already. I think I watch a lot of companies try and move people into places where they don't spend time, like off-site gated content websites, to try and get someone in there. Like, it's super hard to do. Like, repurpose the content and put it in the places where people already are, that is formatted and native to that platform. The second thing you mentioned is nobody likes a cold call. Today, someone was really interested in talking to me, so they decided to call my number 3 times in a row. And the third time, guess what I did? I answered, and I said, "Hey, Lauren." And she said she was Lauren. And I said, "Hey, Lauren, this better be fucking important, because you just called me 3 times. And it wasn't important. And I know where they work. And that touch point was incredibly brand negative. And I don't think anyone really measures that. They only measure the connect rates. But what about all of the negative connect rates? I think that's a really fascinating point that was kind of outside of the topic that we were talking about. So let's dive in. We got a couple questions here. We got a nice roadmap. Alex asked 2 great questions. I don't know if he's going to be on here, but those were something that I'm interested in talking about. But we can go to the chat.
Yeah, I think let's give Alex a chance to. Oh, there he is.
Is he here?
Yes, I am, man.
What's up, Alex? Your questions just keep getting better, man. Helps out everyone.
All right.
What's going on?
4th week back. Loving this. So this is particular to what I'm going through right now, or what our company's going to go through. But is a challenge or an assignment appropriate in the recruitment process at the director or VP level for a demand generation position? For context, Series A or Series B SaaS company, where the demand generation function will be in charge of the full customer lifecycle. So new logos all the way to current. And if you think it is appropriate at that level, do you have any examples to share? Anything that you've come across?
The answer here is 100% yes. You're going to hire this person for a senior level inside of your company, and you aren't going to assess their ability to do work that mirrors the work that's going to be done. Like, that would be irresponsible. We do 100% do a project. It was actually, I think, on the roadmap. So I'll talk you through the whole process that we go through. So first call is culture fit, culture add, right mindset, right skills, like general filter. Second call is 1 hour deep technical assessment inside of the core platforms to understand if they can really do the job. Inside of Salesforce, analyze this dashboard, tell me what this means, build this report, do this. Inside of the ad platforms, reverse engineer what this campaign is doing, tell me what's wrong, do this, do this. Most people break right there. most people love to talk about CPA, but when you ask them what you should do with that ad and it's at 5% impression share and they can't figure it out, those are the places where people start to get exposed. And it's very easy to know. There's 3 levels of that. It's the people that can talk about it and have no idea what they're doing. The people that can that talk about it, that can talk the talk and can kind of get through it. And then there's the people that are like upper echelon, really, really, really know their stuff. And it's very easy to bucket those people into groups. And then, so if they get through that, then the third piece is a project. If they get through that, then the thing on the project is you should not make someone do a project if you are not interested in hiring them. I think that is not a good move. The second thing is I think that it should be one of 2 ways. I always use a fictional project so that it doesn't get confused with free work. It's a fictional project for a fictional company. I think that is a really interesting way that I approach it. I've heard of other people that present a real business problem that they're going through right now, and the person that knocks it out of the park like gets the job. And I don't have a strong stance either way. I could see both sides of that one, but I like to play on the it's very clear that you're not doing free work for us, and so it's like fictional. I'll give you a couple examples. We just got this client. They were previously at 50 million ARR. The coronavirus thing impacted their business. They churned a lot. They're down to 35 million ARR. Have had to raise more money. They're launching this product. You have a $250,000 a month budget to launch this product through the rest of the year. Put together a launch plan, media plan, content plan, and how you're going to measure the results, and then present it as if we are the client. And so and then I try and set a time limit so that they don't overdo it. Like, I know that if I say 3 hours, most people will spend more than 3, but I don't want this to be like, the finals of college or whatever, right? Like, I want people to be able to not have to do a ton of work on the project in order to do a good job. And so I think that is like one example. That's for a director demand gen type role. And with the things that you're going to get, do they set the right metrics? Can they put together a plan? Can they present to an executive team on their plan and back it up confidently? When we ask questions about, we don't believe in Facebook ads when they present it, which is what all of our clients say, how do they talk out of it? Do they talk through experience? Do they know how to do it? Different things. So inside of the presentation, we are presenting objections that are real life objections that we hear all the time, and see how they handle it. Because being able to, push back confidently from an executive on a certain point that you believe in that they don't, if you just roll over, that's not someone that is going to do well inside of our company. So that gives you a pretty good sense about how we do it here. It's worked really well for us up to this point.
I would add one thing to that too.
Yeah, please.
I think it's not just for the company. And,
Totally.
a message that I always deliver as part of this process is, we realize you as the candidate, you're interviewing us the way that we're interviewing you, right? This is a mutually beneficial process, or a mutual process to understand if the fit is there. And so what I tell them is, how we go about this project is going to give you a sense of how we work and what's important to us and how we think about it. And so I think also framing it in that way, puts a little bit more power in the candidate's hand and makes them realize that they should be actively reflecting and evaluating on how that process goes. I'm a big believer that an interview is a two-way street, and both sides are assessing fit. And I think going through that process just also uncovers little things on both sides that can give you insight into what it would actually be like to work with that person. I know Matthew asked, do you pay people for their time on the project? I think for this particular one, we don't. I think sometimes in the past for different creative roles for freelancers, if they're doing some types of projects, we do that a little bit here and there, but not for a director of demand gen role. And usually I always ask at the end of it, how was the experience? We've gotten positive feedback from candidates. They're like, no, this was really good. I really got a sense for what it would be like to work here, what the role really entails. And so I think it's important to contextualize that piece. It's good for both sides, not just the company.
100%.
Alex, I think you had 2 questions. You want to
Yeah.
sneak 2 in?
Let's keep rolling.
You want to hit your second one before?
Whatever.
Okay, this one is way more tactical, and this is probably in line with your 2021 ideas agenda item. But so tactically, what is your take, Megan and Chris, on Cameo for account-based plays? Reviving old, stalled-out deals, maybe? Is it a viable tactic? Yes or no?
This is not too much different than sending a gift in the mail, right? And so, like any of those types of tactics, it comes down to, in my view, number one, your intent and your expectation. If you expect to send this Cameo and get someone into a meeting, then you have the wrong expectation, in my view. I think you should be doing it anyway if that's what you want to do. I think the idea of thinking that it might get someone's attention, it might move a deal, but like in my view, there are way more productive ways to get the outcome that you're trying to get out of that. So is it like flashy and new and give someone something? Yes. Will marketers ruin it within the next 3 months? Yes. And so like I'm not a buyer of that, because I just believe that if you're really good at marketing, you don't need gimmicky stuff like that. But I would support trying it, and if you want, trying to prove me wrong, get Snoop Dogg in there and try and get your top gold account or something. I would love to hear about that.
I'll report back. We set aside some budget, so we'll see what comes out of it. The intention is stalled out conversations. That's who we're going to go after. So people we have somewhat of a relationship with, and they just went cold on us for whatever reason over the last month or 2.
I think the real, like, if I really like try and give you something usable here, it really comes down to how narrow and specific that touch point is to that exact person. Just like a gift. And so demonstrating that you really know them, not like you read their LinkedIn profile and said that, like, they like doing their, like, walking their dog and you send them some dog treats, like something a little bit more thoughtful than that. I think can work based on all of the things that you learned during the discovery. I have the first 5 minutes of our conversations, I ask people about their life, and then I take note of those things, and then I put them into the CRM. Right. And so, because then those are things, not like I'm using them in like a malicious way, but like those are insights that can help you in the future. And I do it and then when they become customers is when I really use that stuff. Christmas is coming up, our happiest customers, surprise and delight. I really think that gifting and Cameo and that type of stuff is much better used, surprise and delight, for customers than how it's used in prospecting.
Yeah,
I think really have that relationship.
I think the trick is you have to do it without the expectation of anything in return.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was going to mention what you said around like the thoughtfulness and the customization. I think make it really personal and don't actually ask for anything. And I think that's the way to do it classy. Mm-hmm. Dasha's got a question about customers. Let's bring her on. Do you want to share your question live? I think you're here.
I'll unmute myself. I won't share the video because I'm on my pajamas.
All good.
Yeah, but Megan, I've listened to you a couple of times, and obviously you're a pro when it comes to talking to your customers, and that's one thing that I've always believed is a major part of success of our organization, is making sure that there's a two-way communication happening. And the company that I've joined about 8 months ago, they haven't really done a good job of going back to their customers and figuring out what went well, what they didn't like, how can they improve. And I told them that they have to do this. They can't just close something and file it under a done folder and never visit it again. And the more I talk to the customers that I do, the more insight I get, and it's been amazing. But the problem is that, I try to send out very personalized messages, looking back at what we've done with them. But I feel like I'm still being perceived as this spammy girl out of marketing who just wants to spend, an hour of their time on useless things. Mm-hmm. And I know that you said actually in one of these sessions, you said you talk to customers every day. So how does that happen? How do you, how do you convince people to give even 5 minutes out of the day to provide just a candid feedback without any specific payback,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a great question and it's challenging, I think. So I think my first approach and tactic is always, can I meet them where they are? Can I show up to something that I know that they'll already be at? So to make this really easy for them, right? To not have them take more time out of their day. So whether that's a scheduled call with someone on our team, whether I know they're going to be at a particular event. So I'm very thoughtful about, can I get in front of them, or can I, get time with them when they're already planning to spend time with the company, whether it's a meeting, an event, whatever it is. So I'm opportunistic in that way, because I just try to maximize an existing interaction and show up to that. So I think,
That's great.
There are customer meetings probably happening at your company, whether it's with sales or customer success or even an executive. So join those conversations, tell the sales rep or the CSM so that they can set the expectation with the customers, and ask for 10 or 15 minutes at the beginning or the end of the conversation so that you can ask a few questions. I think the other part of it is, when you're actually talking with them, framing your questions in a way that makes sense for them. And so not like, I'd really love to ask you some questions to improve our marketing campaigns, right? Like, the customer's like, I don't know if I care about your marketing campaigns. And so the way that I always like to frame like feedback questions that I'm about to ask a customer is, you've been working with us for a while, and I think you have some really important insights that I want to hear so that we can make changes to improve the experience that you're having with the company. So frame everything that you're doing around getting the truth and information from them, and make them feel that it will be recycled to improve whatever it is they're getting from your company. To that end, you want to make good on that too. So you want to make sure that that feedback goes to the right place, that if it's valuable, it's actioned on. Something I always love to do too is make note of what you hear from people. And when ideas are actually actioned, send them a note and say, hey, you gave us this feedback. We made this change, had this positive outcome. People respond really well to that. And those people will be more willing to talk to you again in the future. I think another trick is, if you're really having trouble getting in front of someone, see if you can recruit an executive at your company to help reach out to the customer directly. When a customer hears from, the CEO or a CTO or some, C-level executive that wants to speak with them to hear about their experience, they're typically a little bit more inclined to respond than if it's another person within the organization. So I've definitely played the CEO card before if I had to get in front of a customer that I couldn't get in front of, and that tactic can work really well. But those are some of the things I would do initially. And, you're definitely, I reach out to customers sometimes to get a feedback call, and they don't respond to me. So that happens, you can't win them all. So, but I would focus on those areas. I think that you should be able to get in front of enough to do that. Another thing is, if you do any type of customer surveys, I think I mentioned this last week, but including some type of question of like, hey, would you be willing to, provide feedback? I used to do that regularly in surveys. So we would actually always have a list of 50 to 100 customers that like effectively raised their hand. And almost every time when we actually followed up on that to schedule something, they were like, oh yeah, I remember that. Yep. Happy to spend, 30 minutes on a call with you. And this is another thing too. I don't really believe in, like, unless it's like product market research where you're like, I want an hour of your time. I'm going to put you through these things. We'll give you a gift card for your time. I don't really like bribing people for their time. That said, if someone does give you time and really valuable insight, sending a really nice thank you as a follow-up or a small token of appreciation is a really nice gesture to consider, kind of along the lines of a surprise and delight. So hopefully that
Yep.
helps. It gives you a few tactical things you can take.
That's
with you.
great. And, it's exceptionally challenging for me because I'm sort of like a CMO of a department consisting entirely of me. So I don't have the team. I don't have the same lift, but the idea about reaching out in an existing meeting, I can't believe I haven't thought about it before. That's great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
A couple of just like side thoughts as I listen. I think Megan had a lot of good insights, but I've had my people that are on the customer success team struggle with getting a meeting with customers, not at my company, but at other companies that I've worked for. And typically it comes down to two reasons in my view. The first one is lack of a relationship with that person. Build the relationship and then get that. Obviously it's chicken and the egg, right? But that's one. Typically these are customers that have been 6-12 month customers. Like at that point, hopefully the main CS person has a relationship with that person, or maybe the roles changed or whatever. The second one is that the customer doesn't have confidence that you'll be providing value during that call, that it will be worth their time. Whether that's marketing, sales, CS, anyone. When I get requests for meetings 20 times a day for free consulting, advice, career, different things like that. Like you can't take every call, but I do take ones where I think that person will implement the advice and be successful, or I might learn something, or we can use it for content. And so when you're asking someone for their time, think about what's in it for them at the same time. And that can be done through credibility, through adding it inside of your note, blah, blah, blah. This company across the street is having this type of success with the product, would love to tell you about it. And then, connect whatever. I think all those different things are in play. It ultimately comes down to how many customers are you going to reach out to and how bad do you want it? Like, because I remember in 2013 when I was like, I want to go and visit customers, and I sent 4 LinkedIn emails and nobody answered me and I gave up. And so I think it's just about the repetition, and as you do it, you're going to get better. And then as you have 3 meetings, you're going to have more confidence and you're going to learn more, and the train's going to start to roll. But I think it's about just figuring out how to get the initial start of it rolling.
Definitely.
That's great. Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate it.
Cool. Happy to help, Dasha.
Question. Steven's on, and he submitted a question beforehand. I feel like we have to get to those.
Yeah.
Let's bring Steven on. Let's share your question live.
I don't remember this one, but I'm excited.
Oh, hold on. I got to get you off mute. Can you unmute yourself, or do we have to do it, Chris?
Am I unmuted?
Cool. You're here. You're on.
I made it. Thanks.
You made it. Welcome.
Welcome. This is my first question, third event, so I'm excited.
Nice.
I'm trying to
Good
get
to have
some
you back.
have some advice on marketing for a manufacturing company. I started posting to our LinkedIn, but I'm trying to see what the next step would be towards building out a marketing program. Limited budget or like a small budget.
Mm-hmm. How big's the company?
100+ employees. So marketing is a back burner thing.
How many marketing employees?
Repeat that?
How many marketing employees?
It's just me. I do sales and marketing.
Can you give me a little bit of insight? How much does the product cost? Is it super enterprise, or what it's all about?
It's manufacturing. So aerospace manufacturing at various products. This is government.
Got it. So it's contract manufacturing.
Close enough. Yeah.
Got it. Close enough. Yeah. So I've worked in a lot of companies that manufacture products. I think what you're doing is a little bit different, right? Like you're not manufacturing the product and selling it to the end user. You're selling it to an OEM, right?
Yep.
And so when you're selling it to an OEM, I consider that more like a professional services business than a product business.
Right.
Even though the distinction is not 100% clear, but you are providing it's kind of like a service. In that instance, it's about narrowing in the ICP. It sounds like you're pretty close on that. I would not run a ton of paid because I just don't think that it's going to have good returns for you. And so it goes into what is the professional services mix. The professional services mix is pretty much what we're doing here right now, which is the podcast, LinkedIn, and then an active connection strategy on LinkedIn with the people at the accounts that you're going after, and not just the CTO or the VP of engineering or whoever, the people below them.
Okay.
And do that, connect with 30 to 50 of those people a day and put the content in and build block by block. But that's the path. And the podcast at the beginning is not going to be the place where you get a bunch of leads, but the podcast forces you to create the content that then you use in LinkedIn. And
Sounds
then at
fair.
some point, the tables turn. Like, I'm in the process of feeling the tables turn, where the podcast actually drives more results for us than my LinkedIn content, which is crazy.
Okay. I appreciate that.
Happy to help. So it feels like you're on the right track. You just got to keep going. And when you're in a small TAM organic strategy, it's a long-term strategy. If you hit it right and you know the customers well, and you hit the platform at the right time and all those things, it can go quickly. Like, and other times, like, you gotta figure out the content. You gotta figure out who you're going to interview. You got to learn how to distribute it. Regardless, like, I would do that because these skills are transferable. Like, the same things that I do on LinkedIn is the same thing that I was doing on Facebook in 2012 and Instagram in 2015 to sell other stuff. And then that's why I hit so hard on LinkedIn, because I've already done it in 2 platforms, and the dynamics of social platforms do not change that much. So it will be a skill that will help you in the future, even if it doesn't give you like this massive lift tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you for the advice. Appreciate it.
Happy to help.
Thanks.
Good question, Stephen. All right, it's Bob time. Bob has some questions about Facebook. We need an update, Bob. How are things going?
Hello.
I think I know where I think I might have peeped your question in the chat, and this is something that I really want to talk about.
Cool.
Yeah. So set it up for us, Bob. What's going on?
Sure. So, I started with the Facebook ads. Our service, we have a really good experience where I can post great images of the eyeball, the back of the eye. And so those images are very interesting. So we've gotten a lot of click-throughs to the site, where we talked about a couple episodes ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I was very happy with the inbound volume. I've ran a couple different types of ads. And what I've looked at is we have some business messaging where the ads, the images that I chose weren't particularly very interesting. They didn't get as much click-through, but the clicks that I got, the couple of contact requests, were more mid-funnel. One of the deals, actually, I got called back today. It's been a month, and we're going to go to a contract. So that's a much faster velocity.
So, Bob, you're closing deals on this stuff? That is awesome.
So this is an example
that is
where
awesome, man. Soon I'm going to have to hire you.
I'll tell you. So our average sales, well, I might be over. So our average sales cycle right now is undetermined, but could be as much as 6 months or so. And here's an example of a deal with a velocity of a month, right? And so what I've noticed is those business posts, I've only done 2 of them, although they were lower clicks, there was slightly, a couple of those clicks were much better mid-funnel. The question I have is mismatching the imagery with the message. So when I post an image of the eyeball, I'll do something like teleoptometry exam shows a narrow angle glaucoma case, and just some information like that, click to learn more about our comprehensive exam. When I do the business post, I'll do a big challenge eye care providers face is not being able to hire associate ODs to cover their practices, expand hours with us. But the image isn't very interesting. It's like a picture of our doctor on a screen, or I post a picture of a sign that said, doctors only in Monday and Wednesday, which is like a real sign we took a picture of outside of a practice. So I'm kind of conflicted with, and I'm running out of, by the way, the content that I was repurposing.
Yep.
We only had so many case studies on our website. And so I'm kind of conflicted. Would you still use an interesting image, like one of our eyeball images, with a different message, even though it's mismatched kind of to the message, just to get the clicks? So I'm conflicted there. And then I have a part B to that.
Yeah. So on that one, I totally hear you on that. My first question would be, did you get the contact request because of the image, or because of the content that happened after the click? Right. I think this might be driven more on the on the content that you're bringing them to is more relevant to business versus the medical side of it, which therefore leads to an education and more product consideration.
Sure.
And so I might try and put the two together. I might try to do the I image with the business destination landing page where you optimize for click and you go through. Like, that sounds right. We test. I'll try and give people a big overview on this while we go through. Is companies that we work with complain when we run like stock images that don't look good inside of Facebook, and they complain because it's off brand. And then we test it against a well-designed branded image that an agency puts together for like $5,000. And the stock images works better when you measure it on click-through rate and demo requests by far. For top of funnel content, it just works better. And so that's something that you all can test for yourself, but I'm very fascinated about the amount of subjectivity that goes into creative when the data is right there. Like, the data about how people engage with the content, and you can target how you want, and then you can just make a black and white decision, is one of them. The second thing that I'll offer, and this is more to the audience, Bob, than to you directly, but you might learn something as well, is that we test a ton of variations at once. And so if I were you, I would have the business landing page with the business image, the I, and 6 other ones. And then I would have the medical image with the I, the business, and 6 other ones, to really narrow in on what is the optimal form of creative. And then and then on the content side, my feeling is that the destination, in your exact question, the destination's the thing that's driving the business outcome. And then you should just optimize the creative to drive to that content.
So you triggered another question in my brain, which is, right now I'm only running 2 ads per week. It's basically the same ad with 2 different landing pages, slightly different messaging, same image, one targeting my optician market and one targeting my eye doctor market. So those 2 different audiences. So I'm running those 2 different ad sets. I've noticed some other companies in our space started advertising on paid social, and they're doing, just in eye care in general. And I noticed they're running like 7 or 8 ads at the same time. And I kind of thought they were kind of misdirected. Like, their images were generic. They didn't seem like they were getting very many likes or clicks on their page. I don't know how much click through they're actually getting. But so I was curious, like, with the budget that I'm running right now, it's small potatoes compared to the stuff you're talking about. I'm doing 1,000 a week. Would you run multiple ads with all that different messaging? Would you chop it down like $20 a piece or something instead of $100? I'm running like $100 a piece for 5 days. Would you chop that up?
I would put whatever it is, let's just pretend it's 5 image variations inside the ad set, and then Facebook's algorithm will optimize. You can do some manual stuff to make it go faster, but Facebook's algorithm will converge on the best performing based on your objective.
Gotcha. Perfect.
And so just drop them in there. As a side note, like, for everyone listening, we have an account that's spending $130,000 a month, and most of that is allocated to Facebook ads, and we have 96 ads running right now. Volume matters at that spend level. Variation matters.
Not to monopolize your time, but at some point I would love for you to, you could even rip me apart on the show, and I would show you our ad sets, where I'm just curious. Like, so I've run these ads and I run them for a week, and the frequency starts to get to, like, when it gets to 2 frequency, I've turned them off based off of what you said previously. It drops off. So I started.
Do you do it at the ad set or the ad?
No, at the, well, I have it set to run out at basically $1,000 anyway, and that's pretty much starting to encroach on that 2 frequency. Some of them I've ran out of money at 1.5, 1.7, on the frequency. But that was my allocated budget, is like 1,000 for the week.
Sure.
So one of my questions was, I'm creating a new campaign each week. So I don't know if that's the right thing. Part of me, I wanted to take some of the best performing campaigns and run another ad within that campaign. Would you, because that audience was the one that engaged, like I had the best reach on that campaign, would you ever do that, or do you do a new campaign each week?
I think that people have different opinions on this one. I'll just tell you what I do is a separate campaign for each piece of content, or each destination. And then we also have things where we're running like product focused ads, and we have 5 destination landing pages, and they're coming out in like big loads once a month. So on the first of the month, it's a big creative refresh, 96 new ads or whatever the variations are coming through. And that will all sit in one campaign with separate ad sets for separate audiences and placements, and then and then all those ads will get dropped in to the appropriate side. So that's the way that I would look at it. On your frequency note, the frequency matters in my view at the ad level, right? So if you have 6 ads, you can actually extend the runway of the piece of content if it's a case study, for instance, because the creative is what gets stale first.
Got it. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, happy to help. And then I'll kind of go on a riff because I wanted to talk about a little bit more globally on the idea of creative inside of paid social. Almost every day as I continue to do this, I have a deeper and deeper respect for how important the picture and the words that you put inside of the platform matter to whether or not your success is. We have 96 ads running for this account, and it's very fascinating to look at ones with certain words in it that bubble all the way up to the top. Doesn't matter about the design, it's the words. And then in other cases, it's the background color. And when you have that much variation, you can really start to see trends. When we mention this feature, when we mention this pain point, this is where all the action is. So the variation, I watch companies, some that we work with, to be honest, that spend 3 weeks debating about what the picture should look like, and then it goes through 6 layers of approval, probably like the level before the CEO, and then they put out the one picture and it flops. And they wasted all that time debating something that wasn't going to work anyway. And what would you rather do instead? Create as much as possible and then let the audience tell you exactly what's working. And then, so that's one, is just this amount of subjectivity that I see on this. I don't like this color, or change this word, or things that may not actually make an impact to the results. The next one is, if you were trying to scale campaigns, the volume matters, or you're going to hit diminishing returns really fast on creative variation. And so if you use an agency, it's going to be incredibly expensive and incredibly slow, cost prohibitive at high spends, which is why you end up with a lot of companies, if you like watch closely inside of LinkedIn ads or paid social, big brands that have the same piece of creative running for 3 months, that have the same video running for a whole quarter, because they don't respect the creative and they don't invest the money to recognize how important it is in switching that. And so if you wanted to get to a level where you're spending $100,000 a month, that's why people don't spend that much on paid social, because they don't realize it's not like Google where you just push a button and if there's enough search volume, you're going to scale the results. It's not how it works. You can't just put one thing in the channel and let it go. But the upside is way higher on paid social. I mean, that's a blanket statement. Depending on the product, there's a ton of existing demand in a mature category. Paid search might be the answer. But the way that you break out in your differentiation message, move a category forward, create demand, is paid social. And so really respecting the creative. I used to be a 100% math marketer in 2015. All I need to do is have this thing, get this many things, it'll go through the funnel at this, and blah, 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 blah. And then when you start trying to figure out, okay, we have 20 demo requests, how am I going to get to 70? And you try and just add more money to it and it doesn't work, then you start to realize that there are other layers to doing that. So I've wanted to get that in for a while. And so I appreciate you all indulging me while I could say that.
Elaine has a question related to this, but she's asking, like, are there any magic words in Facebook ads that trigger the response that you've seen? I'm sure that's probably really dependent on the company.
It's audience, product, company match.
Yeah.
That gets, we often take a lot of the existing messaging from companies. So like, we're not on the hook for like messaging their products wrong. We take what they already have on their website and we put it in the right spaces and things like that. And then some of the stuff will hit, but it's more on just finding patterns about those things. And so for, the ER doctor with this ER product, certain things going to work. And that same word might do the opposite of what you want for the CFO.
Yeah.
Hey, Chris, I have a quick question on top of that. Are your clients creating the creative themselves, or did your agency help with the creative?
We work in 3 ways. And it honestly doesn't matter. I think that there's one that's more cohesive, but like people will do what they want. So some of our customers work with agencies where they spend, it's separate agency. They spend a lot of money on creative, which works really well. Over time, that model is not sustainable. It's incredibly expensive and it's too slow. So as you start to scale spend, that will break. The next one is that they have already set up a creative team in-house to do that. Even that, just based on how companies are structured with approvals and all the other asks going into creative, that model usually breaks too at high spends. And we do it for a select amount of companies as well. So any of those ways can work.
Yeah. Do you find one like more effective just in terms of making sure you can be agile and sort of scale effectively and make stuff that works?
So I think that all three can work depending on the players involved. I would say that if it was my SaaS company and I had already proven something that works, I would build the creative in-house because I respect how important it is. And I respect that an agency can't do the volume of things that is needed to be successful all the way. So no matter what time you take that away, I think the path would be to eventually do that yourself.
Yeah. I find that like digital ad design is just a very specified skill set, and it can be hard to find designers who are great at creating ads, which I think is helpful to have an agency that has experience with it until you can find that talent in-house.
Yeah. The kicker on this one is the connection with creative and distribution, having that all in one place that I think is unmatched. Because even like in a situation, we get a bunch of creative, we run all the ads. I immediately see trends and I'm like, I want to change these things now. And what do I need to do? I need to try and communicate that feedback to the client. And then the client's going to communicate it to the agency. They're going to take 3 weeks to come and bring it back. It's not going to be exactly what I asked for. And we're going to run it. And it's too late by then. Right. And so having it all in-house to see an insight, act on it and put it back out. I think that type of speed, agility, not playing telephone game will be a long-term advantage for us.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Our question quality is very high tonight. I have 2 really good ones lined up. One
Love
from
it.
Josh and one from Max. So Josh, you got your question in first. Let's bring you on. It's a podcast question. Your favorite, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. Okay. So I'm the marketing director at a cybersecurity startup. Started about 5 years ago. My marketing background is actually zero, but I've been doing this for a year and a half and really enjoying it.
Nice.
And so yeah, it's been pretty fun actually. So thanks you guys. First of all, like I've learned a ton from the podcast. I've listened to so many back episodes. But we're looking at doing a podcast, starting a podcast, and also at the same time we're moving up market. So that's another challenge. But I think that would be a good move. So I've looked around at the podcasts that are out there, started to think about how we can differentiate. Obviously, you want to be consistent. I know that's one of the things you want to focus on. But basically, my question is, do you have any advice for in a saturated podcast category, digging deep, niching down, and finding something that's going to work?
So in theory, yes. But I'd like to hone a little bit deeper because people think that every podcast category is saturated. Because I talk to all these people in different categories and they're like, this category is saturated. There's 10 million podcasts. And when you actually look, they don't publish frequently. When you listen to it, the content's not good. It's not well reviewed. They're not getting a ton of listens. It's not in the top 500 rankings or whatever the pod charts ranking are. And so you perceive that it's crowded, but it's really not. And so that's the first thing that I would challenge you to look deeper into those things. The way that you differentiate a podcast is through talent, is through being better at the thing that you're doing. Like marketing podcasts are crowded. I'm not saying that our podcast is the best, but we've been able to grow the listenership in the top 100 marketing podcasts in like 6 months, just because the perspective is unique. We do it frequently. We collect feedback from people. We answer real questions. And so those are some of the pieces of the formula that I think make it work really well. The key for you, I think, is having a true expert to be the host. which is a challenge for a lot of cybersecurity companies because they don't employ that person. Or that if they do employ that person would never be tasked with being on the podcast. In order to have a CISO spend 30 minutes listening to your podcast, you got to have some good shit in there. And so,
do you think I should push internally for a hire for that?
There's two ways that you can approach a podcast always. You can have somebody like yourself that is going to go out and be the host and interview experts, which works great. I did that in 2015 video podcast to emergency physicians and loved it. I learned a ton, met all of the key thought leaders, had all of them on our podcast. If I knew the things that I knew now, I would have gotten way more results through like influencers and sharing and different things like that. But that way can definitely work. I don't want to deter you from that. The alternative is to have an internal SME that's the host of the podcast that has their unique perspective. And then you can do things like live Q&A like we're doing right now, or have them be guests on podcasts and use that, or have them invite key people and have like really detailed discussions. I think that you're in a more powerful position when the host is an SME. I also recognize that certain types of people are not built or interested in being that in that role, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the balance that you need to play. Both can work. On your like niching down question, I think that there's being more narrow is good. And if you have the right goals and strategy, being wider is good. Right. And so we've been like flexing up and down. It was very wide at the beginning. We're very narrow right now. We've been getting more and more narrow over time. And then as we grow, we will most likely start to open up again. And so I think that like ebbs and flows based on audience feedback and how the business is changing. But I like the idea. I think that I'm sure it's just like a core marketing framework, but Seth Godin's the one that comes to mind, is to be very, very specific and build in that audience. And then once you have a scale, then you start expanding. And that can be in marketing, product, or in a lot of different things. Like solve one key thing. And then as you grow, you can start to move out.
Okay.
So maybe there's like, I'm just going to just spitball here, but maybe there's like one part of your product that is ultra differentiated, and build your podcast around that initially, around the idea, the category idea of what that feature solves. It's an idea, or you can go wide and interview experts. Both, anything can work. It all in a podcast. It all comes down to execution.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That's
cool.
awesome.
Cool. Great
Good
question, man.
Yeah. Let's bring our friend Max back on. I like this one. I'll let you ask it live.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
What's up, Max? Great to see you again.
You too. I think either of you can have some input on this. So we're kind of looking to move up market now. And that means like bigger deal sizes and kind of offloading the smaller like seat count deals from the reps to more of like a self-service model. So basically like trying to think through the process and messaging to put in place for that to not really tell those companies to F off and they're not important. But at the same time to free up our reps time in order to work those larger deal sizes. So there's basically like two main entry points for it: free trial and then just scheduling a demo. So it's like behind forms basically, just so it can get scheduled with everyone. So we don't want to like necessarily lose the information if we automatically kick back a message saying you don't qualify for this. So it's just thinking through the process after submission in order to get them to like educate themselves on what they need. If they're a smaller deal size, then kind of push them towards like the buy now option, and then just moving the rest onto the like normal sales cadence.
So I have a perspective on this that is probably not going to jive with how most people would look at this. But you currently right now, you have a sales motion serving this segment of customers that you no longer want to have a sales motion for, correct?
Pretty much, yeah.
Pretty much, yeah. And so if you've gotten to this point doing that, like those customers have to have some level of profitability. And so on the off chance that one of those customers comes through the demo form, like I don't know what's the size of your company is, but I don't think it would be too hard to have, one person that's the SMB rep. Maybe it's a growth position for an SDR that covers that and does a demo and then helps people get into a free trial or buy the product at a lower ACV. Like that's what I would do. And if the volume, you need to adjust from there. But if you give people both paths, and a lot of people that fit into that segment take that path, then it's your job, I think, to figure out how to make that path work for those types of customers. If you were going for super efficiency and all of these different things, you wouldn't do that path. But I believe in the concept of word of mouth the most. I believe in the concept of what happens when that person moves companies to your largest enterprise deal in 12 months from now and then influences that purchase. And so showing them the product right now, like we spend so much time and money trying to get someone to take a look and thoughtfully evaluate our product. And then when someone asks for a demo, we're going to tell them they're too small. It's just like, that's my perspective. I know people will disagree, but that's the way that I would do it.
I have something to add on this too,
yeah.
from experience, actually. So when I was at a company managed by Q, we realized actually our smallest segment was not profitable. And we're like, we can't keep paying salespeople to sell this segment of customers. But at the time I was on the hook for the revenue number, and I had the same mindset as you, Chris. I'm like, they're coming to us, they want to use it. Like, we just have to figure out a way that it makes sense. Right. So we actually did remove the salesperson from the process, but what we did was we made it really clear of how they could basically self-serve and sign up for it. So we invested a lot in like the in-product app queues and sort of the help center to try and do that. That said, if at any point they got stuck, we routed them to the support team. And we had trained a couple of support reps to be able to navigate the types of questions that come up for customers that are going through the sign up self-serve process. And it worked. And so you were basically like, these are people that want to use it. And so, the support person isn't selling, they're answering questions, they're troubleshooting a problem. And we were able to route them to like a subset on the team. So we did give them a little extra training and guidance because some of the things they were encountering were a little bit different than, customers that had been using the product. But we were able to remove sales from the process, not pay commission, and still capture that business and provide them a good experience. And what was interesting actually is because they're dealing with like a customer support person and not a salesperson, it also just created a different dynamic in their first experience with us. That was positive. They just had someone that was trying to work through a technical issue, a question, whatever it was. So I don't know if you have that infrastructure at your company, but just thought I would throw that out there because it worked for us.
Nice. So what do you think about just like I agree with you guys of not completely like getting rid of it, but consolidating it rather than having single one-off demos with companies that have like Soho's like 3 people. Just we do have like a weekly recurring demo of just like, if it is smaller, then we have them just like sign up for that. It's live still, so there's Q&A at the end. It's just rather than spreading it out so far with reps, it's just on this one single time block that we can kind of expand it out if we have increased volumes and kind of offer up some different times.
Yeah, that works. We did that for a free product that we had sort of separate from the one that people paid for because we didn't want to invest. So yeah, that can definitely work. And or some type of online video that they can self-serve on. Like record one of them. Yeah,
there's a ton of different options here. I think that there are some answers that are more right for certain situations than others. But I think all the answers here presented and used in the right context could work for you.
Cool. Thanks.
Cool. Great question.
CVH has got a couple questions lined up.
Cool.
Let's bring them on.
I'm still waiting for, I'm excited to see you, Chris. I'm still waiting for Jonathan to drop his question. He's been quiet the past couple weeks.
No, I think he's always dropping some stuff in there.
I see it in the chat for sure.
Or that.
All right, Chris, get on here.
Yes, sir. So it's actually back to podcasting because I'm trying to think through it, but a little bit different.
Hold on. Did you get a new job, by the way?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, congratulations. What are you doing?
Thank you. Director of sales at Prodigal. So, sales and marketing. So Here we go.
Congrats.
I gotta learn sales and I gotta learn marketing real fast. Yeah, so I'm trying to think through from like a podcasting perspective. So our industry, we sell into collections, very an old boys kind of club. So I got to riff off of people's influence because the barriers to entry are very high. And so what I'm trying to think through with a podcast is, would it make sense to have kind of a rotation of influencers or like some like core guests? And would that be beneficial? Would that be confusing to an audience? Because I'm just not sure, since like, you know, these guys are what, like 40, 50, 60 years old, been in the industry for like 20 years. I don't know how willing they would be to like do like a reoccurring podcast, which is my concern. But to kind of pivot around that, I'm thinking if I had a rotation of influencers, could there be even more exponential value because I'm riffing off of multiple people's influences, or would it just cause confusion and kind of chaos in a podcast and not give like enough value to make it coherent?
I wouldn't worry. I think you're overthinking it on the confusion side. I don't have a hard stance on it, but the recurring with multiple people, I think, will break because of other people's schedules and the commitment level from those people. And so I would do it opportunistically. And so like I've had people, there's 3 episodes of my podcast with people, right? And I just do it when that person says something that aligns with what I believe in at that exact time. And I say, hey, you want to chat about this? I believe in it too. And then they come on. And so you can kind of like do that. I believe in having those types of people in your network. As you do it, the goal is to have a lot of people, like the networking for you in a closed space. I mean, there was a guy, you weren't on here last week, but this guy, David, came on. He's selling to insurance executives, and he's told a story about, he was an individual contributor AE selling to SVPs in insurance companies selling SaaS. And he had 15 names that he chose of executives at his target accounts. And he sent out 15 invites for his podcast, and 13 of the people said yes on the first try. And so you can use that as an entry point to start to get into the circle, to start to know the who's who and know the lingo and the style. And then as you become associated with those people, you can you almost find your way in if you do it appropriately, right? And then you're actually the person that is inside of the circle, bringing other people in the circle together. So that's kind of like the process. So I would have a wish list of people, and hopefully it's long. Like I wouldn't box yourself into 4 people recurring. I'd give yourself a lot of space to get out with a lot of people. And then there's, you know, however many people that come on the podcast and you guys jive, and there's a lot of stuff going and good ideas and things like that. And those are people that you can go back to. But for this type of thing, and this happened, as I reflect on it, I didn't really notice it, but this is what happened to me in 2015 when I was doing it in the medical community, where it's like, who's this? Like, so I think I was like 25 at the time. I had no idea what I was doing. And within like 6 to 12 months, like knew everyone that I needed to know, like would go to the conference where all these people were, and they would be like buying me shots, like these doctors. And so like, it's, if you have the right intent and you take the right approach, it can be a very fruitful approach to networking.
Gotcha. And then this second question is going to be completely different, but from a more strategic perspective. So my CEO and like our VCs and things like that are more sales focused. They don't heavily believe in like the value of marketing.
And so is everyone.
Right.
Yeah.
But for me, like I know I'm a weird sales guy that I fully believe in marketing. And so I'm already trying to lay groundwork to figure out how to position like, hey, this is something we really need to invest in. Because obviously they're focusing on the short term, you know, sales leads, just cold call, get the meeting, get it going. How do I really position marketing to have them kind of buy into it and really start investing in it when I'm looking at 2021?
I think there's a couple approaches here. The one that I like the best, to be honest, and it's not, you're probably not going to have enough time to see it through before they plan the 2021, but is to do the podcast and become either the best rep or have some successes and be like, this is how you do business development today. You can have 20 people banging the phones, or we can crush this podcast and get way more business. So you have to decide what the temperature is of those people, about whether you can kind of like will your way into some experiments, which is but 100% possible. I did that. I had to beg for $500 to run Facebook ads in 2016, but after a long time, I got it, and I made that $500 work. We got like 4 demo requests and 1 customer on a $500 test, and that's when the wheels started turning for people. When it takes them way longer and it's way more expensive to get a meeting, and we got customers. So 2 paths: speak through action, just prove it out over time and let that take it, or figure out a way to craft an experiment and present a plan of what you need in order to get it done, and what your success metrics are, and what you expect out of it, and if it's successful, what you want to do after that.
Gotcha.
Both ways can work.
And Chris, I think you came on a little bit after we started and missed the first thing that we were talking about. I don't know, maybe the 99.1% argument could work. So just to quickly recap, we were just describing how, like, at any given point, 1% of your market's ready to buy, the 99% isn't. And if we invest in marketing, we can educate the majority of the people so that when they are ready to buy, they come to us. It might not fly, but I'm like loving this argument right now. Just throw it out there, see if it works. Let us know.
I'll give it a try. Thank you.
For that.
Cool. Always great to see you, man.
For that. I feel like we have to bring Jonathan on now.
Of course. Call them out.
I know. Did you think of a good question? What do you got?
I'm gonna take a bio break. I'll be right back. Guys, so it started last week when you guys were going on and on about the value of client success, which I 100% believe in, where I started my career. It continued today, Chris, through your post where I said attribution is the marketing great white whale. So I'm going to totally flip back on myself and ask you to help figure out a way to start the strategic dialogue of putting cost and value on getting things like referrals, getting things like case studies, getting things out of your clients, because it's just a black box. And because it's a black box, and because these organizations are siloed, and because there's politics that comes into play, and everything that we talked about last week that comes into it, it just becomes a sales leader or salesperson or head of marketing hat in hand to customer success asking for something, and their reality of their world. Like, if there's nothing set up in the organization, or it's infrequent, or it's not formalized, or Megan hasn't been there for 6 months and can't fix the damn thing, there's no kind of understanding of where it goes. And I know, it's impossible, but if you were to start to try to help an organization be like, all right, our ACV is 100K. And if we had a case study, or we had a client that wanted to be a referral, or we got a quote, can we start to put, a value on that and a cost associated with getting that, so that we can, as we formulate and formalize the process, get to a point that's not going to be as good as like, oh, this Facebook ad cost this, it generated this, which is still an incomplete path to an actual purchase. But there's absolutely nothing on leveraging the client side around anything when it comes to numbers. It's just like, oh, it'd be great if we had more case studies. Yeah, we should have more case studies.
Yeah,
they help us sell. And I know I'm asking the impossible, but where could we even start so that, these organizational heads can be like, oh yeah, okay, I should think of it as half of my ACV, or 3x my ACV, or something.
While you were asking the question, I'm just going to be 100% honest. I was like trying to think of an answer, and it just feels wrong.
Okay.
Like, it feels wrong for the fact that if you don't recognize that having happy customers tell other people is one of the most important parts of your business, arguably the most important part aside from your product. And those kind of two go hand in hand anyway. If you don't have that, then you're not going to build a big business.
Right.
And so if there's an executive that doesn't buy into that concept, then they are lost. And I'm not interested in trying to create some metric that makes them feel right, like it. Like I was going to post about it today. I kind of censored my original post, but I'll tell some people about it now, is that MarTech vendors are so good at selling software because they brainwash you with metrics that don't matter, that support the use of their software. That's why there's so much MarTech being sold. And that's how they have to sell it. They have to attach a metric that has some type of ROI conversation. So you're in ABM conversations that are measuring on engagement. And I believe in engagement, but I don't believe in how those tools measure it. And so I don't like the idea of building metrics to create a narrative when you should just believe in the narrative. It's a really weird way of looking at it. But and another thing, this is more philosophical, is that I am only focused on attracting and working with people that already believe in the things that I believe in. I'm not interested in convincing people of things that they don't want to be convinced of. Mm-hmm. It just makes life way easier.
I'll throw something into the mix, Jonathan, that could be helpful. Not a metric, but in my experience, when I have expressed something that I believe to be true on behalf of my customers to executives, board, whatever, and they're not buying into it, I'll give it a few tries, but then my go-to is, how can I create a scenario where that executive can hear it directly from a customer? Because what I'll tell you is, anytime I get an executive and a customer in a room, the customer says something, that executive who doesn't talk to customers that often for the next 6 months will be like, the last time I talked to a customer, they said this.
Totally agree.
So, like, that is what you should be trying to do. Like, they're not going to hear you, even if you are representing the customer. So create a scenario where they hear it directly and it's authentic, and then they will evangelize it. They'll be like, I talked to one customer and they said this, like, this is truth now. And so that could be a tactic to employ.
Learn how to capture the flavor of the quarter.
Exactly. Use it to your advantage.
No, that's 100% fair. I wasn't expecting a quick and easy and dirty answer.
Yeah, no, your questions are awesome.
But it
make me think. Yeah.
Organization after organization, whether it's personally or hearing third party, I forget her name, but asked the question about getting this process started earlier. It's just amazing how many, sub 100 million, that's, kind of where I focus, $100 million companies don't talk to their customers, period. Never mind trying to
fascinated me for 6 years.
Anyway, thanks for the couch time, I guess.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. I'm happy if there's more questions, but I didn't see a ton in the chat, and there was kind of like, I don't even know where I'm really going to go with this, but there was one more promised topic on the agenda, so maybe I'll riff on it for a minute.
Let's do it.
Which was ideas for 2021 planning. And so I'm going through the process and helping a lot of our customers plan. And I'm just going to talk more at a high level. I'm not going to get into specific things, but the things that are happening in the accounts that we work with that are having good results are percent of marketing, excluding headcount, so variable marketing budget, the percent digital allocation is going way up. And that is per like my recommendations, from 18% to 45%, like big jumps. And that's not to say that if you don't know how to make it work at 18%, then do not go to 45, right? And that's a caveat, but like, that is one thing that I'm definitely seeing. Another thing that I'm seeing is, obviously events are down. Like, the planned expense on events is way down. I see a lot of companies cutting out tactics that simply don't work anymore, like third-party content syndication. I've been shitting on that tactic for a long time, but like, and to be clear, third-party content syndication, just for everyone listening, is when you put a gated ebook on someone else's website and then have a sales cadence behind it once they download it, which is just a terrible tactic. That, not to be confused with something like Software Advice or Capterra, which I consider an affiliate or an aggregator. But content syndication, putting content on another website under a gate, paying per lead, it's just something I watch companies spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on that and hit their MQL target and create zero opportunities out of all those leads. And so you should stop spending that $200,000 a year on that and go and put it somewhere else. What else am I seeing? I see companies that are, I mean, we talk about this all the time on the podcast, but if you go out to tech land, 50 million ARR SaaS, people are starting to take brand channels a lot more seriously, specifically podcast and LinkedIn, which I think for a lot of those types of brands with big growth aspirations is 12 to 24 months too late. But at least they're moving in that direction. Some of the channels, like, and I've done this in several channels. We're kind of going off topic here, but when you see it happen, you have to move with conviction, because the best parts of the channel happen at the beginning, not once everyone is on it. The best time to be on LinkedIn was 2.5 years ago. The best time to be producing, I wish I wasn't even there. I was posting every once in a while, but I wasn't commenting. I didn't have a strategy. I was also inside of a business. I have a lot of empathy for people that work inside of companies and can't do the things that I do on LinkedIn because of how their coworkers or the leadership in those companies would view them, because the leaders of the company want to suppress your content in order for you to not be successful so that you stay at that company longer, which is the exact opposite of how I would want to for the type of leader that I would want to work for. Secondarily, I think in a lot of companies, people can read content, read between the lines of content and misinterpret it, which creates internal challenges, which are also unfortunate. And so kind of took a little weird road there in that monologue, but those are some of the things I'm seeing in 2021 planning. If anyone has quick questions on what they're trying to figure out for 2021, maybe as we go through this entire process, maybe in the December timeframe, I can share some more things that I'm seeing, but early signs, those are a couple things that look clear to me.
I'm muted. There's a couple questions in here around like virtual events and attracting people to virtual booths. And as we get into 2021, I think virtual events is still going to continue to be a thing. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. I'm not even sure what virtual booths look like.
So me either, because I'm so not interested in this. But my understanding is like they have tried to mimic a physical event as much as possible, where the events, and then they literally go out into this like virtual hall and people wait for people to meet. And there has to be a marketing tactic that you have more confidence in than that. There has to be, especially for the cost relative to that thing, like to hope that person comes by and talks to you and you're paying like whatever it is, 5, 10, it could be more, thousands of dollars in order to sit there for a couple of days. How else could you use that money to move the needle on those couple people that might show up that probably won't buy something? This becomes a cost benefit to me. It's also something to self-reflect and be like, wow, like, is this the place where I'm spending? If the idea of what you would do to attract someone to your virtual booth, I would much rather use it to attract them into your website, into a sales meeting, right? Like forget promoting a virtual booth, just go out and promote.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. My girl, Jess, you have a question. Come on. Let's get on the air.
Maybe I should ask one for one.
Yeah, this is related to 2021, I think.
Yeah, it's more just looking at probably one of the hardest roles to find talent for at the moment, and sort of trends you're finding in where those sort of skills gaps are, whether it's having to have that combo of two things to be able to do something in-house, like you were saying before. If there's some emerging areas because of things becoming much more digital. So just, I guess, some ideas for what things people might be worth trying to skill up in and spending a bit more time learning how to do, or tie it with something else, or potentially market themselves as whatever that person is, to be able to find something that everyone's needing.
So the first thing that came to mind when you asked this question are not hard technical skills, actually. I think that a lot of marketers have the technical skills and lack some of the other skills that are holding them back from being more successful, like empathy, curiosity, intrinsic motivation, desire to help the person that they're marketing to. Like those things are the things that are lacking in marketing today, not the ability to make an automation in HubSpot. And if you had those things, then you would understand your buyers and bring that back, and then apply the tech with empathy and understanding that helps people. That's the first thing that comes to mind, but now we'll kind of like move into the more technical side. What are the biggest skill gaps in marketing in general? From a hard skill standpoint, I think that that marketers fall in one of two camps. They fall in the 100% math and analytics camp, or 100% art and have no concept of math or business. The real key is in respecting and understanding both. Understanding how important the words are that are used on the website, and also understanding how the words influence the conversion rate and later stage funnel metrics, right? And so putting those things together, I think, is probably an interesting skill gap. I talked to a ton of people that like want to take the CPM cost, the current CPM cost of Facebook ads, and back calculate it to close won revenue. And I'm like, marketing is not math. There's math involved, but it's not. If it was all math, then none of us would be sitting here. It'd be figured out. Computers would do it. Everything would be solved. It's not all about math. And so that's one of the big gaps that I see. If we look at places where I think marketing teams are struggling to hire, I do hear on the digital ad designer, I don't think it's as much of a challenge as a couple people have mentioned here. We've been able to find them pretty quickly. The key is potentially switching up your hiring criteria. So on digital ad designers, like there are plenty of people that make pictures and videos for Instagram ads for B2C companies, and you need to figure out how you could use their talent if they have the desire to move into tech about that. Those are the ones that come to mind. I could riff off pretty much every job, marketing ops, leadership, blah, 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 blah. But like, those are the first ones that came to mind that I think are important.
Cool. Thanks.
Any follow-up, Jess?
No, not really. It was more.
What do you think is the biggest gap?
I agree that having the empathy and being able to tie it back to customers is definitely a big thing. It's more, there's just so many different elements to marketing, and especially if you have an option to do quite a lot of different things, it's like, should I jump heaps more into Facebook ads and learn how to do that? Should I be spending more? It's sort of, you only have so much time in the day, and what are the areas that would make the most sense to sort of lean into next that probably has a future, because you don't want to try and do something that's sort of at the end of its life either. Mm-hmm. So maybe TikTok, I don't know.
Totally. I mean, like I mentioned earlier in the call, like the concept of running Facebook ads and figuring that out will directly apply to running TikTok ads. I learned most of my paid search skills running Amazon search ads, not in Google, which was fascinating to me, because I could see that the broad match keywords were not generating positive ROI straight away, which is why I do not bid on broad match keywords and drive them into ebooks, because I know that they don't convert. I can validate that inside of Salesforce data. And so the idea that like you're going to learn something and never use it in the future, the skills become very transferable. They actually like kind of fuel on one another. And so that's one thing. I thought about this is why I like going back and forth, because I have like little key thoughts, is on the idea of that doing a lot of different things, I think, is underrated in marketing. Everyone's all about the T-shaped marketer. How about and even the T-shaped marketers often are just doing one thing and call themselves a T-shaped marketer. They can do most often it's SEO, but they could never run they only live in search. They could never run a paid social ad. They would never know how to put graphic design together. They could never build a Salesforce dashboard. That's not a T-shaped marketer. And so I like the breadth of skills. The experience that I did running demand gen by myself at a sophisticated company is why I have the knowledge in all these different areas. And so if you go into a company and it's 30 people in the marketing team and you are doing one separate thing, I think it can be really dangerous. You need to figure out ways to be able to, and at the beginning of my career, I would do that on the side. I would build those little companies in my bedroom so that I could run Instagram ads. So I could figure out Amazon search. So if you can't get it inside of your company, honestly, I think that a lot of times you get more value in a side hustle than in terms of learning, more value in a side hustle than sometimes inside of a company.
I have two skills to add. Oh, go ahead, Jess.
Ooh, love it.
Well, if you want to look at doing, you know, a bit of everything, and that's a good way of going. I totally agree. I think it's really helpful knowing how every bits work and fit together. But if you then want to look for something else, everything's very, we need a demand gen that's like quite a specific role, or we need a content writer, or we need that kind of, and if you're more of a generalist, how can you sort of compete in that sort of market?
It's fascinating because I consider myself a generalist, and I am deep in all of the general things that I know. And so, like, just because you're a generalist doesn't mean you have surface level understanding. It just means that you know a lot of different things. Why can't you go deep and wide? You could. And so that, I think that's just because you have a breadth of knowledge does not mean that you don't have depth of understanding either.
That made me think of a third skill too.
And then you could use that as an inroad with the content writer job, and then you get the job, and then you quickly demonstrate that you know the whole thing, and you quickly get promoted and you run the team.
Yeah, doing that well is about controlling your narrative, telling your story, and demonstrating through your experience that you can apply it to whatever that job is, regardless. I think two things, this was a great back and forth. I loved it. And this has come up in a lot of questions, you know, tonight, but also in prior weeks. I think managing up and collaboration. There's so many questions around how do I convince the executive team, or how do I convince the head of sales, or this and that. I think managing up is a very difficult skill to acquire and be really good at. And I think marketers need to invest in that. I think everybody needs to invest in that. And then collaboration. I think the secret is marketing, sales, and success working really well together. And I think you can't, you're so dependent on your efforts being carried through successfully with these other teams. And I think all of those skills are around kind of working more effectively internally at your company. And those are just as important as, you know, your functional skill set that you're developing. So I would add that to the mix as well.
Cool. I think we got time for one more. Somebody maybe that hasn't asked a question, you want to shout one out? Don't leave us hanging. We're going to wait for one more question. So somebody can jump in and take it, or I'm just going to ramble for a while.
Someone unmute and jump in. Who's the brave soul?
Oh, yeah, we got someone. Ariani, what's up?
Well, this is not related to marketing.
That's okay.
But I am very curious about, you know, you guys are talking about the skills for marketers, skills for the demand gen people. But now I am wondering, what are some of the skills or the experiences that you're looking for in someone in a supportive role? Let's say a second executive assistant or something, you know, supporting both of you. I'm asking for a friend.
Great question. I can jump in and kick it off, and then you can add anything, Chris. Some of my favorite skills, being proactive, being optimistic. I like to call myself a persistent optimist. And I like surrounding myself with people who are the same. Obviously, like organized, resourceful. I think a pleasure to be around, able to work with anybody, creative, able to get things done. Those are sort of the most important things that come to mind. Did I miss anything, Chris? What would you add to that?
Nothing to add on that one. That was fabulous.
Oh yeah, nailed
fabulous. It. All right, everyone. Appreciate the question. I think this is a good place to stop. Just to go back to the beginning, like it's going to be a big week, and I think just you know, no matter what happens, I'll go back to what I said at the beginning. Like everyone has control over how they react and what they do. And when you have accountability, you assume the mindset that you control the outcome, not someone else. It's a very empowering way to go through life. And so hope that all resonates. Hope you all have a great rest of your week. I am super happy that we had like a pretty good attendance on this night, and some faces that I haven't seen in a while. So it's great to see you all, and appreciate that you guys drop by every once in a while. I love it. And yeah, hope to see you again soon.
Take care, everybody.
Have a good night.
Take care.